To address the issue of a restrictive licensing test, firstly, gather evidence. Document the number of failed tests and the dates they were offered. Collect written proof of the test requirements, including the prohibition on review after taking the test. Secondly, contact the licensing board. Schedule a formal meeting with the county licensing board to express concerns and request a review of the test. Provide the evidence you have gathered and explain how the current test format and policies are creating an insurmountable barrier. Thirdly, present a case for change. Argue that the current test format is not a fair representation of an individual's knowledge and skills. Explain that the strict limitations on calculators, review, and scrap paper are unnecessarily restrictive and hinder effective test taking. Suggest alternative test accommodations such as open book or laptop-based testing, the use of calculators, and access to scrap paper or digital note-taking tools. Fourthly, seek support from external agencies. Contact the New York State Licensing Board or the Department of State to inquire about the acceptability of the county's test. Reach out to professional organizations or industry experts for support and guidance on best practices for licensing exams. Fifthly, explore legal options. If all other avenues have been exhausted, consider consulting with an attorney who specializes in administrative law or licensing disputes. A lawyer can assess whether there are legal grounds to challenge the county's test and seek an injunction or other remedy. Furthermore, consider transparency. Request that the licensing board make the test questions and scoring criteria available for review after the test is administered. Advocate for the establishment of a formal appeals process so that individuals who fail the test can obtain a fair review of their performance. Ensure that the licensing board offers adequate continuing education opportunities to help individuals prepare for the exam. Changing the licensing test format and policies may require the approval of the county licensing board and potential legislative action. The process can be time-consuming and challenging, but it is important to advocate for fair and equitable testing procedures. When documenting the number of failed tests, be sure to include specific dates, the number of candidates who took the test, and the number of candidates who passed. This data helps to illustrate the severity of the issue and demonstrate the need for change. When collecting written proof of the test requirements, obtain official documentation such as policy manuals, test guidelines, and any written communication from the licensing board regarding the test format and restrictions. This documentation serves as concrete evidence of the existing policies and can be used to support your case for change. During the formal meeting with the county licensing board, present your concerns in a professional and respectful manner. Clearly articulate the issues with the current test format and explain how these issues are negatively impacting candidates. Be prepared to answer questions and provide additional information to support your arguments. When arguing that the current test format is not a fair representation of an individual's knowledge and skills, emphasize the importance of practical application in real-world scenarios. Explain that the test should assess a candidate's ability to apply their knowledge in a practical setting rather than simply memorizing facts and figures. When suggesting alternative test accommodations, provide specific examples of how these accommodations would improve the fairness and accuracy of the test. For example, allowing the use of calculators would enable candidates to focus on problem solving and critical thinking, rather than spending time on manual calculations. When contacting the New York State Licensing Board or the Department of State, inquire about any regulations or guidelines that govern the county's licensing test. Determine whether the county's test is in compliance with state standards and whether there are any avenues for appealing the county's decision. When reaching out to professional organizations or industry experts, seek their expertise on best practices for licensing exams. Ask for their input on alternative test formats and accommodations that would better assess a candidate's knowledge and skills. When consulting with an attorney, provide them with all of the evidence and documentation you have gathered. The attorney can assess the legal grounds for challenging the county's test and advise you on the best course of action. When requesting that the licensing board make the test questions and scoring criteria available for review, emphasize the importance of transparency and accountability. Explain that transparency helps to ensure that the test is fair and unbiased and that candidates have the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. When advocating for the establishment of a formal appeals process, propose a clear and well-defined process for appealing test results. This process should include the opportunity to submit additional information, present evidence, and receive a written explanation of the board's decision. When ensuring that the licensing board offers adequate continuing education opportunities, suggest specific topics and formats that would be most beneficial for candidates. These opportunities should focus on practical application, problem solving, and the latest industry standards and regulations. Changing the licensing test format and policies can be a complex and time-consuming process, but it is important to remain persistent and advocate for fair and equitable testing procedures. By gathering evidence, contacting the licensing board, seeking external support, and exploring legal options, you can increase your chances of success.